September 2018, detectives position themselves in silence across the bustling, prestigious campus of the University of California, Berkeley. The autumn sun cast long shadows over the brick pathways and sprawling green lawns of the academic sanctuary. Law enforcement officers keep their focus locked on an unremarkable back-scheduled man walking between the towering faculty buildings. He looks like any other academic professional navigating his daily routine. This is Roy Charles Waller. His everyday job is an environmental health and safety specialist. He lectures university students and staff on workplace hazards and disaster protocols. Without warning, plainclothes officers intercept him in broad daylight. They move with absolute precision, cornering the safety specialist and securing his wrists in cold steel handcuffs. The man who spent his days preaching safety protocols offers no resistance. Stunned onlookers watch the police escort him away. For more than 25 years, this quiet university employee harbored a monstrous secret, living a complete and unremarkable double life. The authorities have just apprehended the elusive predator, known as the Northern California Rapist. This precise moment marks the sudden, shocking end to one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in the history of the state. Northern California in the early 1990s defined itself through peaceful, idyllic college towns and quiet suburban neighborhoods. Communities like Rohnert Park, Davis, and Chico rested beneath wide canopies of ancient oak trees and endless blue skies. The physical geography of these towns featured sprawling residential grids, long avenues lined with parked cars, and low-rise apartment complexes designed for students and young professionals. As evening descended, sodium vapor streetlights flickered to life, casting an orange glow across the manicured lawns and asphalt driveways. Residents possessed a profound inherent sense of security within these boundaries. The era predated the constant surveillance of digital cameras and ubiquitous smartphones. Neighbors recognized one another by face, establishing a tight-knit cultural climate where community trust remained absolute. Heavy wooden front doors often remained unlocked during the daytime. Bicycles leaned against wooden porch railings without heavy security chains. The local police departments primarily handled minor property crimes and community noise complaints. It was an environment built on optimism and quiet domesticity. No one suspected that this tranquil, sunny surface served as a hunting ground, a dark shadow prepared to fall over the entire region. The victims living in these communities were ordinary women with bright aspirations. They dedicated their days to higher education, demanding careers, and the pursuit of independence. Their lives revolved around established, comfortable daily routines. A typical day involved commuting to university classes, working late shifts at local businesses, and returning home to their quiet sanctuaries. The spatial layout of their living spaces reflected their independence, featuring small kitchens with textbooks stacked on tables, and living rooms illuminated by the soft glow of television screens. Returning home at night meant the familiar turn of a brass key, the heavy metallic click of a deadbolt, and the reassuring hum of a refrigerator. These women relaxed in their well-lit apartments, entirely focused on building their futures. They valued the quiet isolation of their homes after exhausting days. They possessed no reason to believe their sanctuaries harbored any threat. Their daily habits, from the exact time they parked their cars to the moment they extinguished their bedroom lights, followed predictable rhythms. They lived their lives in the open, completely unaware of the surrounding darkness. This profound sense of safety became their greatest vulnerability. Beyond the illuminated windows of these apartments, a highly organized intruder observed their every move. This unseen observer weaponized the predictable routines of his targets. He stood in the dark spaces between streetlights, memorizing floor plans and identifying blind spots in the suburban architecture. He noted the exact moments when doors were unlocked and mapped the fastest escape routes through neighboring backyards. The predator understood the local geography better than the residents themselves. He recognized that these young women lived alone, isolated within their secure bubbles. His systematic surveillance stripped away their privacy long before he ever made physical contact. The communities of Northern California rested on a precipice. An invisible countdown had already begun. The illusion of suburban safety was about to crack under the weight of unrelenting terror. The region faced a 15-year nightmare that would forever alter the public perception of domestic security. The women of Rohnert Park and neighboring counties stood directly in the path of a phantom. The campaign of terror officially begins during the year 1991 within the quiet boundaries of Rohnert Park, California. The physical geography of the scene involves a standard suburban residential unit, flanked by narrow walkways and thick decorative shrubs that provide deep shadows. Nicole Ernest Pate, a young woman securing her future, returns to the presumed safety of this home. She locks her doors and settles into her evening routine, seeking rest. A violent breach shatters the silence of the apartment. An intruder infiltrates the locked sanctuary, emerging from the darkness of her own living space. He obscures his face completely beneath a dark ski mask, hiding every human feature from his target. The assailant brandishes a heavy metallic handgun, establishing absolute physical dominance over the environment. The appearance of the weapon paralyzes the victim, halting any chance of escape or resistance. He corners her within the narrow hallway of her home. The profound shift from domestic peace to pure survival terror occurs in a matter of seconds. This initial, highly calculated ambush sets a rigid blueprint for the devastation that follows. The intruder operates with terrifying mechanical precision, wasting no time on erratic movements. He forces his victim into submission and produces thick plastic zip ties. The harsh ratcheting sound of the heavy plastic fills the quiet room as he binds her wrists together. He then tears strips of silver duct tape from a roll, utilizing the adhesive to render her completely incapacitated. In a chilling signature move, he places the thick tape directly over her closed eyes. This calculated action plunges the young woman into total darkness, stripping away her spatial awareness. He systematically eliminates her ability to see his face or anticipate his next move. The predator whispers quiet, menacing threats into her ear, maintaining absolute psychological control. He subjects her to hours of prolonged systematic assault and emotional torture. The victim endures the nightmare while bound and blinded in the very place she considered safest. Before departing into the night, the intruder searches the residence for trophies. He steals specific items of jewelry and small electronics, packing them away. He leaves his victim bound in the dark and slips silently back into the suburban landscape. The phantom repeats and refines this exact protocol over the following years, striking again on Halloween night in the year 1996 in the city of Martinez. The spatial layout of this attack involves a quiet residential street, contrasting sharply with the festive, chaotic energy of the holiday outside. Children walk the sidewalks, collecting candy, while a monster breaches a nearby home. This time, the intruder replaces his standard dark disguise with a hollow, terrifying skeleton mask. He ambushes another unsuspecting woman, deploying the identical combination of a handgun, plastic zip ties, and thick silver tape. He binds her limbs and seals her eyes shut, repeating his dark ritual of sensory deprivation and violence. The psychological torment extends far beyond the physical attack itself. Weeks after the Halloween intrusion, the assailant dials the workplace of his Martinez victim. He speaks to her over the telephone, offering a twisted, cold apology for his actions. This telephone call demonstrates his supreme arrogance and his desire to inflict lingering mental anguish. He forces his victims to realize that he knows where they work and where they sleep. The predator tightens his invisible grip on the region, operating with absolute impunity. Law enforcement units arrive at these shattered sanctuaries only to face profound investigative dead ends. Flashing red and blue lights reflect off the vinyl siding of the suburban complexes as patrol officers secure the perimeters. Crime scene technicians step into the controlled environments, dusting for fingerprints and searching for microscopic clues. They find nothing of value, realizing the attacker wore gloves and planned his entry and exit routes flawlessly. The local police departments encounter a massive systemic failure driven by jurisdictional boundaries. Detectives in Romart Park operate independently from the investigators in Martinez, utilizing separate filing systems and distinct command structures. Information remains siloed within individual county borders, preventing the immediate recognition of a serial pattern. The Phantom exploits this rigid bureaucratic protocol, crossing county lines to reset his trail after every strike. The lack of a centralized digital database in the early 1990s forces detectives to rely on physical paper files and localized intelligence. The authorities face a terrifying reality. A highly intelligent, mobile offender is outsmarting multiple police departments. The evidence lockers remain empty, and the suspect's sketches offer nothing but vague shadows. The hunt for the Phantom begins in earnest, but the predator has already vanished into the ranks of ordinary society. The geographic scope of the terror expands across 6 distinct Northern California counties throughout the late 1990s. The Phantom pushes his hunting grounds into Vallejo, Davis, Woodland, Chico, and the sprawling metropolitan grid of Sacramento. The physical distances between these cities require complex logistical planning, calculated driving routes, and an intimate understanding of regional highway systems. The predator alters his established methodology, escalating his demands from theft to calculated financial extortion. He binds his victims within their dim bedrooms and introduces a terrifying new layer of psychological pressure. He demands the personal identification numbers for their bank accounts, holding a heavy weapon to ensure absolute compliance. He leaves the bound women alone in the suffocating darkness of their homes while he travels to nearby automated teller machines. The victims endure an agonizing wait, listening to the deafening silence of their empty apartments, uncertain if their tormentor will return. Security cameras capture grainy footage of a masked figure withdrawing cash from these machines, but the low-resolution video offers zero identifiable facial features. Investigators later classify these specific acts as kidnapping for extortion, a charge carrying massive legal weight. The jurisdiction map on the wall of the Central Task Force grows crowded with red pushpins. Each pin represents a shattered life and a frustrated local police department. While law enforcement agencies scramble to connect these overlapping crime scenes, a mild-mannered man builds an entirely separate existence. The year 1992 brings a significant career milestone for Roy Charles Waller. He secures a respected position as an environmental health and safety specialist at the University of California, Berkeley. The campus features grandstone architecture, bustling student plaza, and towering eucalyptus trees. Waller occupies a functional illuminated office within the Office of Environment, Health, and Safety. His daily responsibilities involve drafting hazard protocols, inspecting laboratory equipment, and lecturing university staff on personal security measures. He stands before classrooms filled with attentive professionals, projecting the absolute authority of a dedicated safety expert. He returns home each evening to the quiet, affluent waterfront city of Batia. He marries his partner, raises a child, and maintains a manicured lawn in a respectable suburban neighborhood. Neighbors observe a quiet family man washing his car on Sunday mornings and attending community events. His mask of absolute normalcy remains impenetrable to the outside world. No one suspects the man writing safety manuals spends his nights studying the vulnerabilities of young women. He weaponizes his professional knowledge of security systems and human behavior to execute his dark campaign. Forensic science undergoes a massive revolution during the mid-1990s, offering a glimmer of hope to desperate investigators. Crime scene technicians collect microscopic biological material left behind at the scattered attack sites. They transport these clues to sterile state laboratories filled with humming centrifuges and bright fluorescent lights. Scientists utilize emerging polymerase chain reaction technology to extract and amplify a definitive genetic fingerprint from the degraded samples. They link the disparate crime scenes in Sonoma, Solano, Contra Costa, Yolo, Butte, and Sacramento counties to a single unidentified profile. The task force officially christens this unknown genetic entity the Norcal rapist. Detectives carry this sequence to the Combined DNA Index System, the central national database managed by federal authorities. They input the data with high expectations, waiting for the computer algorithms to return a name and an address. The digital search process concludes and delivers a devastating absolute zero. The computer screens display no matches, slamming the investigation into a massive concrete wall. A rigid legal loophole protects the predator from discovery. The federal database only catalogs the genetic profiles of individuals previously convicted of specific felony offenses. Waller possesses no criminal record, shielding his biological identity from the conventional justice system. The absence of a database match forces the multi-jurisdictional task force into a grueling cycle of traditional manual detective work. 6 separate county agencies attempt to coordinate their efforts, but profound bureaucratic friction impedes their progress. Detectives operate on different radio frequencies and utilize incompatible digital filing systems, slowing the exchange of critical intelligence. They generate hundreds of composite sketches based on the limited, traumatized recollections of the survivors. Patrol officers distribute these black and white drawings to local businesses, pinning them to community bulletin boards and convenience store windows. The public response floods the localized tip lines with hundreds of useless leads and false sightings. Investigators dedicate thousands of hours to interviewing local transients, known offenders, and suspicious neighbors, chasing shadows down endless blind alleys. They subject innocent men to intense interrogations and collect voluntary biological samples to rule them out as suspects. Every single lead evaporates under the scrutiny of forensic testing. The sheer volume of paperwork overwhelms the physical storage capacities of the precinct offices. The structural limitations of the era prevent the task force from utilizing advanced data analysis to pinpoint the geographic anchor of the suspect. The predator continues his calculated strikes while the police drown in an ocean of irrelevant information. The dawn of the 2000s brings no relief to the women of Northern California. The Phantom strikes again in the city of Sacramento, proving his stamina and his unwavering commitment to his dark rituals. The spatial reality of these later crime scenes mirrors the earlier attacks, featuring isolated apartment units and heavy, drawn window blinds. He breaches these perimeters with the same chilling efficiency, deploying his signature combination of firearms, zip ties, and thick silver tape. He subjects his latest victims to the identical psychological torture, controlling their physical environment and stripping away their autonomy. The continuous nature of these attacks frustrates the seasoned detectives working the grueling night shifts. They park their unmarked cruisers in dark lots, drinking bitter coffee and staring at the sprawling apartment complexes, waiting for a ghost to manifest. They increase marked police patrols in targeted neighborhoods, flashing their heavy spotlights down narrow alleyways. The attacker monitors the police scanners and utilizes his deep knowledge of emergency response times to evade the rolling nets. The burden of the unsolved case weighs on the shoulders of the original investigators. Many of the lead detectives reach the end of their careers, forced into retirement with the crushing knowledge of their failure. They hand their battered case files over to a new generation of law enforcement officers. The timeline stretches through the 2010s, transforming the active pursuit into a stagnant cold case. The physical evidence transitions from the busy laboratory benches to the silent, climate-controlled, deep storage rooms of the state evidence facilities. Cardboard boxes labeled with heavy black marker stack high on metal shelving units, gathering dust under the dim warehouse lights. The zip ties, the rolls of silver tape, and the microscopic biological swabs sit locked behind heavy steel doors. While the investigation remains frozen, Roy Charles Waller continues his upward trajectory at the university. He celebrates over 20 years of uninterrupted employment at the Berkeley campus, earning the deep trust of his academic colleagues. He walks the brick pathways with a leather briefcase, discussing safety protocols with faculty members and advising students on hazard mitigation. His extensive knowledge of environmental health provides him with a perfect impenetrable shield against any outside suspicion. The people surrounding him interact daily with a monster blind to the reality hidden behind his polite smile and wire-rimmed glasses. The survivors of his attacks carry the heavy invisible scars of their encounters, struggling to reclaim their stolen sense of security. They navigate their daily lives, scanning crowds and checking the locks on their doors, haunted by the memory of the taped-over eyes. The justice system offers them nothing but an agonizing silence for nearly 3 decades. The stalemate breaks during the early months of the year 2018. A monumental shift in forensic science alters the landscape of cold case investigations across the state. Authorities apprehend the notorious Golden State Killer, utilizing a pioneering method known as investigative genetic genealogy. This groundbreaking technique inspires the determined investigators operating out of the Sacramento County Cold Case Unit. They realize this new scientific avenue bypasses the traditional constraints of the National Criminal Database. Detectives petition the state laboratory to retrieve the decades-old biological evidence from the deep freeze of the storage warehouse. Forensic technicians break the wax seals on the original evidence envelopes under the bright lights of the sterile examination rooms. They extract the preserved genetic material and begin the complex process of formatting the data for a different type of search. The investigators cease looking for a direct match to a convicted felon in a closed police system. They prepare to cast a massive digital net into the public domain, utilizing open-source ancestry platforms. The task force officers sit in their cramped briefing rooms, holding their breath as they initiate the final phase of their long hunt. The invisible shield protecting the safety specialist from Berkeley prepares to shatter. The harsh fluorescent lights of the Sacramento Cold Case Unit illuminate the intense faces of detectives staring at glowing computer monitors. They take the digitized genetic profile of the phantom and upload the complex sequence directly to a public ancestry database. This open-source platform exists primarily for ordinary citizens tracing their family heritage and building family trees. Specialized genealogists join the task force to navigate this massive digital library of human biology. These experts painstakingly construct elaborate family trees originating from distant genetic cousins. They dig through decades of public records, examining faded census documents, property deeds, and county birth certificates. The researchers map out intricate branches of ancestors, slowly eliminating dead ends and narrowing the biological web. The search requires absolute precision, moving generation by generation down a specific family line. They cross-reference birth locations with the geographical timeline of the historical attacks across the region. The digital breadcrumbs align perfectly, converging on a single undeniable point of origin. The genetic trail points directly to a highly unlikely suspect living in the quiet suburbs of Benicia. The authorities stare at the name on their screens, discovering Roy Charles Waller. The mild-mannered university safety specialist suddenly becomes the prime target of a massive multi-jurisdictional manhunt. Law enforcement officers launch a covert surveillance operation, blanketing the physical geography surrounding the university campus. Plainclothes detectives position themselves along the busy sidewalks and within parked vehicles outside his office building. They watch their target emerge into the autumn sunlight, observing his calm demeanor and unremarkable daily routine. The investigators require a fresh abandoned biological sample to confirm the digital findings in a certified laboratory. They shadow Waller through the bustling city streets, waiting for him to make a single careless mistake. The tension mounts as detectives track his vehicle and monitor his movements through public commercial spaces. The safety specialist adventurously a beverage, drinks from a plastic straw, and discards the item into a public trash receptacle. Detectives move instantly, securing the discarded straw and placing it inside a sterile evidence container. A tactical courier rushes the item across the region to the State Crime Laboratory for expedited analysis. Forensic scientists extract the cellular material from the plastic surface and compare it against the decades-old crime scene evidence. The scientific machinery hums, calculating the millions of individual genetic markers. The laboratory returns a definitive mathematical match linking the two isolated samples. The biological fingerprint from the discarded straw mirrors the genetic profile of the phantom perfectly. A terrifying realization washes over the multi-jurisdictional task force gathered inside the command center. This violent predator hid in plain sight for more than a quarter of a century. He stood before university students and staff, lecturing them on personal security and hazard mitigation. He harbored a monstrous past beneath a veneer of academic authority and suburban normalcy. The detectives review his employment history, noting the chilling intersection between his professional safety training and his precise methods of intrusion. He understood institutional vulnerabilities perfectly, utilizing this knowledge to bypass domestic security measures. The realization that he weaponized his professional expertise infuriates the veteran investigators. The command staff coordinates a massive tactical response, uniting the separate law enforcement agencies that hunted him for decades. Officers from Roane Park, Davis, and Chico stand shoulder to shoulder with the Sacramento cold case team. They draft the formal arrest warrants, ensuring absolute legal compliance to prevent any technical loopholes. The strategic planners finalize the apprehension strategy, choosing a public daytime operation to neutralize any potential for a physical standoff. The task force issues the final deployment orders just 10 days after the laboratory confirms the genetic match. The chronological endpoint of the long nightmare arrives on the morning of September 20, 2018. Detectives converge on the sprawling, brick-lined campus of the University of California, Berkeley. The physical environment features bustling student plazas, towering eucalyptus trees, and wide concrete pathways. Plainclothes officers form an invisible, tightening perimeter around the Bexescabald safety specialist. They track his movements as he walks casually between the academic halls, carrying his work materials. The tactical units close the distance rapidly, intercepting Waller in broad daylight before a crowd of unsuspecting witnesses. They secure his wrists in cold metal, moving with absolute silence and overwhelming force. The sudden action abruptly terminates his 27-year run of freedom. The Phantom offers no physical resistance, staring blankly ahead as the steel handcuffs lock into place. The man who systematically terrorized the women of Northern California surrenders without uttering a single word. Stunned university staff watch the authorities escort their respected colleague away from the administrative buildings. Waller vanishes into the back of an unmarked police cruiser. The arrest shatters his double life on the pavement, bringing the active pursuit to a definitive halt. The pursuit of moral justice shifts from the streets to the wood-paneled confines of a Sacramento County courtroom. The highly anticipated criminal trial officially commences during the month of October in the year 2020. The physical space features high ceilings, heavy oak benches, and a solemn atmosphere commanding absolute silence. Roy Charles Waller sits at the defense table, stripped of his academic authority and forced to face the reality of his actions. Prosecutors present an overwhelming mountain of physical evidence to the attentive jury over the course of nearly a month. They project the definitive genetic test results onto large screens, linking his biology to almost every single crime scene. The state systematically dismantles any defense theories, proving the mathematical impossibility of an alternate suspect. The legal team outlines his methodical campaign, detailing his calculated movements across the 6 county lines. They display the plastic zip ties and the rolls of silver tape, transforming the abstract terror into tangible courtroom exhibits. The meticulous presentation of facts leaves the defense attorneys with no viable arguments to counter the forensic truth. The arrogant predator who believed he outsmarted the system sits entirely trapped by his own cellular material. The overwhelming volume of data paints a clear picture of a highly organized, relentless offender. The true power of the trial emerges when the brave survivors take the witness stand to confront their tormentor. Multiple women step into the harsh lighting of the courtroom, reclaiming the power stolen from them decades earlier. They look directly at the man who invaded their sanctuaries, refusing to be silenced or intimidated by his presence. They recount the precise, harrowing details of his methodical crimes, speaking with unwavering strength. Nicole Ernest Pate, the target of his very first known attack in Rongert Park, delivers a deeply emotional testimony. She describes the absolute darkness of her own living room and the heavy weight of the tape over her eyes. She addresses the court with profound clarity, stating she always wished her attacker had possessed the courage to look her in the eye. Her words resonate through the silent room, highlighting the extreme cowardice of the masked intruder. The survivors detail the enduring psychological scars, the sleepless nights, and the shattered illusions of domestic security. Their collective voices paint a devastating portrait of a man who systematically destroyed lives for his own gratification. The jury listens with rapt attention, absorbing the immense human cost of the 15-year reign of terror. The women who endured the darkest horrors finally secure their moment of absolute truth in the light of day. They force the predator to listen to the exact measure of pain he inflicted upon their lives. The prosecution rests its monumental case, passing the heavy burden of judgment to the 12 members of the jury. The jurors retreat to a closed deliberation room on the 18th of November 2020. They review the towering stacks of forensic documents, the crime scene photographs, and the powerful survivor testimonies. The overwhelming weight of the genetic evidence accelerates their decision-making process. The panel reaches a unanimous consensus in merely 2.5 hours, a remarkably swift conclusion to a decades-long mystery. The jury foreperson hands the sealed documents to the bailiff, who passes them to the presiding judge. The clerk reads the definitive verdict aloud, the words echoing across the tense, crowded gallery. The jury finds Roy Charles Waller guilty on all 46 felony charges. The convictions include 21 separate counts of severe physical assault and 8 counts of kidnapping for extortion. The massive list of guilty verdicts systematically addresses every shattered door, every stolen item, and every destroyed boundary. The Phantom officially transforms into a convicted, documented felon, permanently losing his shield of anonymity. An immediate wave of relief washes over the seated survivors, marking the end of their agonizing uncertainty. The swift verdict validates their decades of suffering and confirms the absolute guilt of the man at the defense table. The final chapter of the legal process convenes on the 18th of December 2020. Sacramento County Superior Court Judge James Arguelles presides over the sentencing hearing, staring down at the disgraced safety specialist. The judge addresses the extreme severity of the crimes, emphasizing the profound damage inflicted upon the communities of Northern California. He hands down a staggering absolute sentence designed to ensure the predator never breathes free air again. The court mandates a term of 897 years to life in state prison. This monumental penalty can consist of a 459-year term running consecutively with a 438 years to life sentence. The rigid structure of the ruling explicitly eliminates any future possibility of parole. Officers escort Waller from the courtroom, banishing him to a concrete cell for the remainder of his natural life. The conclusion of the trial brings a profound, deeply earned sense of justice to the resilient survivors and their families. The successful prosecution stands as a landmark victory for the field of investigative genetic genealogy. It proves that advancements in biological science can pierce the darkest shadows of the past. The man who exploited the vulnerabilities of others ultimately falls to the enduring mathematical truth of his own DNA. The sunny, idyllic communities of Northern California finally close the book on their most terrifying phantom.